Hi everyone, my name is Lydia Dawe. I'm a copyright officer at Curtin University Library, and I'm here to talk about rights retention at Curtin University. And I'm joining you today from the lands of the Whadjuk Noongar people. That's where Curtin University Bentley is located, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders, past and present. So a bit of background. So Curtin University has an open scholarship policy, and that was created in 2024. What distinguishes this policy is that it's what's called a Harvard-style rights retention policy, and that means that it grants rights back to the authors if those rights are lost. And Curtin is one of the few institutions in the Southern Hemisphere with this kind of policy. So we knew at Curtin Library that we wanted to have an open access policy. We didn't have one. Pretty much all universities have them. We had to have one too. And at first we thought we'll just do an open access policy, but then we wanted to make it a little bit broader in scope and also make reference to not only scholarly articles, but also open educational resources. So that's why it's got a slightly broader scope. And we discovered that after looking around, doing an environmental scan, and seeing what was happening internationally. And a key resource for us was this Harvard Open Access Policy Wiki, which was created from Harvard University. And it's just a great guide to why these policies are important, how they work, who has them, and how to create one at your local institution. So it's very, very practical, and it gave us a lot of support as we were drafting our policy, as to how to word it and how to talk to people about it. So I highly recommend this resource if you're interested. Harvard Open Access Wiki. The other thing that was useful to us were the writings of Peter Suber, who has been an open access advocate for a long time. And he writes in really plain language about how rights retention works. In particular, this great article he wrote, which is a response to an academic who had misunderstood how the open access policy worked. And he really goes through piece by piece and describes how it works and allays people's fears. So I highly recommend that resource as well. So the timeline. Really, it took about, um, not too long really from the time we started the project to actually getting the policy fully approved. So we started out in March 23. That was when we did our scoping, decided on what kind of things we wanted to include in the policy. We we identified stakeholders early, so making sure that we had a stakeholder group that was representing all the schools and various departments within the university, such as the research office and other areas, and made sure that they were on board with where we were going to go. So before we even drafted anything, we discussed our ideas with this group to see what they thought and to get that initial engagement. And this timeline doesn't show all the engagement we did. It just gives you an indication that we did engage throughout with this group, and they were very supportive and of us, and we really appreciated that. So we drafted a policy, and again, we got the stakeholder group to look at it. They gave us a lot of comments. They had a lot of questions, concerns. We addressed them, polished language, things like that. We also discussed the legal aspects with our legal department, so they were aware, and covered off on any issues there. And then in June, July 2024, we put it out for general consultation. So that's when everyone at the university had an opportunity to give their feedback on the policy draft. And we looked at all of that feedback, and this was a really good opportunity to get ahead of any concerns there. And then it's in September 2024, that's when our policy went through all the approval channels and academic councils and committees, to finally be approved and adopted as a university-wide policy. Now, the key aspect of this policy is the rights retention clause, as I said, and that is something that we got from the Harvard Wiki. And it says here that essentially, even though academics at Curtin own the copyright to their work, they grant a license back to the university. And the university is able to use that license for a couple of things. One, it means that that license can be granted then back to the academic if the academic signs a licensing agreement and they lose rights, the university can grant rights back to them. And it also gives the university or the university library latitude to do things like upload documents to the university institutional repository. So that's for scholarly articles. So that's a key part of the rights retention element of this policy. We also have existing intellectual property policy and procedures, and those needed to be changed to be in line with our policy. So we made sure that the intellectual policy procedures were in line with the open scholarship policy. Now, one aspect that was interesting when we were going through this, because this policy is quite, well, it's quite not radical, but it is a little bit different from maybe what publishers might be used to, in that we are asserting something and expecting publishers to adjust to us rather than the other way around. So there was a question after the policy was approved, whether or not or how we would notify publishers about this. And we looked around at the landscape and saw a few options. One would be that the library, the university, could provide publishers with a copy of a letter informing them of the policy. Or we could ask academics to include a rights retention statement in their submissions to publishers, or we could do neither and just get publishers to accept the status quo. And we decided to take the third option. The reason being, we didn't want to put the onus on our academics, and we didn't want them to be afraid of doing this. We wanted to really drive this from at a university level. And also we felt that since these types of policies have been around since 2008, and they've been adopted by many, many prominent universities in North America, in Europe, and in the UK, we felt that publishers are pretty aware of these policies by now. And the publisher landscape has actually changed as a result of these policies being enacted. I really like this statement from the University of Oslo, where they actually say on their website, you have no obligation to inform the publisher about the rights retention policy. The information provided here is considered official and publicly available information regarding the policies for University of Oslo authors. So I like how it puts the onus on the publisher rather than putting it on the author. Now, for us, one of the differences, I suppose, is that after we launched the policy, various changes happened and we weren't able to launch it in the time that we had expected. We had a restructure within the library, and then we also had a transition of repositories from an older one to a newer model. So we sort of had to wait until things had settled down before we had the new repository, which had many more capabilities, before we can really launch the policy and communicate about it in earnest. So really that's now. That's really been the chance that now's the time for us to communicate about the policy. Now, so far we have been having conversations with academics at committee meetings, and we have had a lot of support. Questions are easily answered and easily allayed. I think people more and more really do understand the importance of open access and the benefits of disseminating information. So getting that message out there and understood is going to be a key challenge. And I'm sure there'll be other challenges along the way that we may not have anticipated, but I think we're ready to meet them. So for more information about Curtin University's policy, you can visit the Open Scholarship Policy website, which has a list of FAQs. And you can also see our video on YouTube, Open Access and the Open Scholarship Policy. Thank you.